Okay, so welcome back to my channel. I am Jason, and this is from Sin's Perspective Reviews. So I wanted to wrap up my recap of Lupin Season 1, Chapters 4 and 5. So if you are interested in hearing what I have to say, stay tuned. Okay, so Chapter 4 opens with this drone. It's kind of navigating through the house. We realize it's Pellegrini's house. Not sure what time it is, whether it's the wee hours of the morning or late at night. But the drone makes its way to navigated towards Pellegrini's office. It has a chance to take a few photos of some documents that are just out on the desk. And as the drone was being navigated out of the house, it trips the alarm, which of course alerts Pellegrini's security team. They kind of shuttle him into another room in the house, and once they disable the drone, they take it to him, and there is a note attached saying, "I'm coming for you," or "I'm going to get you," something to that effect. So the following day, Dumont is in a cafe, and I guess Arsène decides, at this point it's safe to reveal himself to Dumont because he has enough evidence on Dumont to end his career and put him behind bars. So I guess he at this point feel like he doesn't have anything to worry about with Dumont. And so, I mean, he was nice. He did replace his Siri. And then he, started asking him questions about what he wanted to talk to Pellegrini about. And eventually, there was like this stare off, and eventually Arsène kind of bluffed him, right? Like, okay, so do you know where your wife is? And Dumont was like, she's at work. He's like, no, she's not at work. And so basically he was trying to insinuate that he may have his wife somewhere. And of course, given what happened to Dumont, he's not going to put it past Arsène that he would kidnap his wife and probably do the same thing to her that he did. This was probably to invoke that same, the memory that he could be doing the same thing to my wife that he did to me. And eventually, Dumont tells him about a reporter who at the time in 95, 96, something like that, when the whole necklace situation went down, she was very close to taking Pellegrini down, but of course, him being who he was, she was not able to do that. And so now he has a name. So as he left, Dumont got on the phone and called his wife, and of course his wife was like, well, I'm at work. And so, of course, now he's feeling like, okay, he was bluffed, but, it was what it was. So, back at Arsène's place, or his hideout, whatever the case is, he's now doing some research on the journalist Fabian, who, was the investigative reporter way back yonder. And she actually wrote a book. I think she may have written a couple of books. And so he actually ordered one of her, the book that she wrote on Pellegrini. And eventually, while this was going on, it was flashing back and forth to this woman who was coming home. And, she had her dog and she made it up to the steps. And then next thing you know, she make it to her apartment and Arsène is there. Initially, he didn't introduce himself. He was asking her, because she was going under using a different name at this point, because he was asking her if she was Fabian. She initially said no, she really didn't want to be bothered. And then, he told her who he was, about, Belcar was his father, and, his name, and she eventually told, I guess he really admitted to who she was, but then she basically said that, she didn't want to get involved, that Pellegrini basically ruined her career, and, basically, a lot of people are afraid of him, and she didn't want to be bothered, and she just asked them to leave. Okay, so back at the police station, Yusuf, Sophia, and the captain are asking Dumont questions. Of course, he is stonewall and he's not trying to say too much about anything. And they realized they weren't going to get anything, and eventually they left. And so shortly after they got up, he received a text from Pellegrini asking, he basically said that you wanted to talk about Babacar Diop, and when did you want to meet? And he basically sent him a responded to the text saying that, I'm still trying to find out some information, but I'll let you know. So Arsène is arriving back to his home, and he could see Fabian's dog. And he looks over and she's sitting in the car. And, they talk a little bit. And of course, he asked her, like, how did you know where I lived? And she was like, well, a good journalist never reveals their source. And she decided that at this point, Pellegrini has taken everything from her. So she really doesn't have anything to lose. And after, the whole dealings with him, that she was blacklisted and she wasn't able to, get another job in her field. No paper, I guess, publication would hire her. And, she agreed to help him take Pellegrini down. So at the police station, it's kind of going back and forth. So they have different witnesses coming in, giving their what they remember. They're trying to come up with the composite of Arsène. And so Yusuf and Sophie are on the outside, looking in as they're talking to the artist, trying to come up with this image. And of course, they're getting impatient, but. I'm pretty sure they know that at this point it's a process that takes time. So, Fabian and Arsène is now sitting outside her old office, and she's telling him about a tape that is there that contains some information, some criminal that would incriminate Pellegrini. And of course, he kind of questions, like, well, why did you never get the tape? And she was saying how she was never able to. I guess when everything blew up, maybe, they ousted her pretty quick and she probably wasn't able to get much of anything. So he decides to put on a disguise and go in. They pull this ruse and he go in to, he's there to deliver some documentation. So he had grabbed some folders there, and I guess he had some random papers in it. He went in, and she called the guard at the desk, basically claiming to be a reporter, and how she described the person he's probably a nervous looking man. He has some folders. He has some very important documents that I need him to bring to me. And if you see him, please just send him to my office. And of course they playing this whole role. So eventually, the guard saw him and sent him on his way. The thing is, as he was coming down to leave, there was another security guard that came up, and so both the guards were talking, and they saw him coming down, and the other guard who wasn't there was like, well, who was that? And the guard was saying, oh, he went to so-and-so's office for something. And the guard was like, well, that can't be right, because that reporter was on vacation, or something to that effect. The reporter wasn't there, so they realized that something was up. They gave chase. Of course, he ran out, jumped in the car, and they pulled off. So again, it's flashing back and forth to the police station. So they're having different witnesses come in to help with the composites. And eventually they end up with several different composites of how they think how this person looks. Of course, you have several different people. They're going to remember different things. I know that there's some science to it, and how we, interpret information and face recognition and that kind of thing. So of course you have several different people giving their account. So they end up having several different composites. So Arsène is back at his place, and they're about to watch the VHS tape, and she basically summarized what they're going to see before the tape plays. And it's she started talking about there was an attack in '96 in Malaysia, where 11 people were killed, and he was saying it was promoted as a terrorist attack. 11 people were killed, 8 were French, and around that time, that's when they opened the French embassy. And she was saying how it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was actually someone who, it was like a gun deal gone bad, basically. And the person that brokered that deal was Pellegrini. And so when they played the tape, you saw him. He was meeting with the people and basically orchestrated this entire thing. And so Fabian was like, well, maybe he used some of the insurance money he got from the necklace to pay for the guns. And so Arsène was like, well, it seems like he was a traitor to his country. And so they feel like at this point they got him. Fabian did confirm that, around that time his company was going through some financial issues. And so of course this was an insurance scam, basically. So they agreed to post something to Twitter. And he ends up asking her, Arsène asked Fabian, well, so how did you get the tape? And of course she says, a good journalist would never reveal their sources. And he kind of smirked and left it alone. So we flash to Pellegrini. It looks like they're at home, at his house, and Juliet is there. They're having some meeting, and of course, next thing you know, all their cell phones are going off, getting notifications. Juliet basically asked everyone to step out, and then she started questioning her father about what is this this person is talking about, basically saying you have 24 hours to tell the truth about the necklace, or they're going to release information they have about the Malaysian meeting. And of course, he lied and was like, I don't know what these people are talking about. You know, he's this victim. People are always trying to attack him and their family. Da, 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 da. And he basically told her to delete it and not worry about it. And she was like, well, it's already been retweeted 2,000 times. So at this point, it's out of their control. So Arsène arrives at Claire's. This was funny. So he was there to spend time with their son. It was her night out. And he was obviously there so, you know, he can't be alone. And he was under the impression that it was a girl's night out. So he's sitting playing the game with his son. And the son let the cat out of the bag that she was actually on a date. And of course he's like, what are you talking about? And he's, see, I don't know, was she actually on a date? Or was it a girl's night out? Because I think, okay, so, he was asking them about the guy. And, Raul said something. He said, oh, so you've met him? He was like, oh, well, he spent the night. And then, of course, Arsène was like, what? And then, of course, he said, I'm just joking. But Arsène was trying to play it off like, oh, well, I'm glad, she deserves to be happy. And so Raul knew he was full of, you know what, and it's like, stop pretending like you don't care. It's exactly what he said to his dad. And they kind of laughed a little bit. You can see Arsène's face, like he kind of laughed a little bit. So Arsène's back home, and I was wondering like what happened to Benjamin. So he and Benjamin is there as well, and they're watching the news. Obviously, this when this came out, every news station picked it up. So you have reporters all outside his house, and he is now having to address the issue. And so basically, it's the woe is me, because I'm this important person and we have this great country. People are always trying to people are always trying to find ways to kind of denigrate our country and attack me and attack my family and, this whole thing. And so next you notice that Fabian is in the crowd, right? And so she ends up asking him flat out, about what happened in Malaysia. And he saw her and he recognized her. But the thing is, one of his security guys was standing off to the side. He saw her as well. And so at that point, Pellegrini ended the interview and he went into the house. And you can see she kind of felt real good. Like, I guess it felt good for her to get back out there. And, because it had been so long. And so as she was walking, you kind of see that security guy kind of following her. And, she walked, made it all the way home. And so she, I guess at that point felt like she had lost him, right? So, Arsène comes to her apartment and he congratulates her. Initially he was surprised to see her on TV when she asked the question. But, she talked about how it felt good to be back out there, how it was just like old times, and he gave her some flowers, and he was like, so what's next? So they end up talking, and this is the thing, I don't understand why they chose to do it this way. He decided that it's time because the person who posted the tweet was named, Salvatore. The person who posted the tweet was named Salvatore something. And so Pellegrini called him out like, if you feel like you have all this information, then why don't you come forward? And so when Fabian asked, okay, so what's next? He's like, okay, he had contacted a news station and he wants to be the one to come forward. And initially she didn't want him to do that, but he felt like he had already asked too much of her. And he decided he would do it. And so you see him at his hideout, and he's getting his old disguise together. And, you could tell that he's, he cares, at this point he cares, cares for her. And he has decided, she's there kind of helping him, well, just passing him like his equipment to get his disguise on. And he eventually give her, I think it was a set of ink pens. I believe that's what that was. And he basically told her that he, felt that she was ready to, get back, to start writing again. And, she thanked him because, she felt like, she had been away for so long that, and him coming back into her life kind of lit a fire under her, and it's now allowed her to be able to get back out there again. And so back at the police station, they're now talking to Dumont again because they have all these composites. And of course, he's saying, none of these, no, this is not the person. I really can't tell you who the person is. And then Yusuf puts a composite on top that is, of course, Arsène. And he kind of clocked his reaction, but Dumont was like, no, that's not who this is. And he basically said that he would have his own people investigate. And he basically took them off the case. And of course, they begged him not to, but they decided to, he was like, I would just have my own team investigate. So Sophia and the captain got up and walked away. And you kind of see Yusuf still sitting there kind of looking at him because, again, he clocked his reaction when he put Hassan's composite on top. And eventually he got up and walked off, and he caught up with Sophia and the captain, and basically he said that he's hiding something. They know something is going on, but at the same time, he's their boss, and he's an officer, and so they, they're like, what are we supposed to do? Investigate one of our own? And they basically wanted him to drop it, and they walked off. But of course, Yusuf is really on this, and he's like a dog with a bone. He's not letting this go. So Arsène is now, he's doing the interview, and he's now looks like some old man, right? And so the interviewer was like, well, I'm surprised to see someone that looks like you, who would make such an accusation. He was like, why? Because of his age. He was like, people assume that because you have a Twitter account that you're young. That people assume that because you have a Twitter account and that you believe in justice that you're young. And so he basically asked them, okay, so what are we going to see? And he explained what was on the tape, what they were about to see. They played the tape, and somehow just that quick, the tape had been edited. Somehow they were able to do it. He realized that the interviewer was in on it. And basically, he was asking the interviewer, okay, so what happened? What did you do? And the interviewer was like, you know what? I'm not even going to get into this whole conspiracy thing. He knew that was that. And so as he was leaving, Pellegrini was there, and his security team was trying to stop him. He ends up having to fight his way out. He makes it out. Juliet ends up calling her dad and ends up telling him everything. How she thinks she knows who the person is, how it's Hassan Diab, Babacar's son, how he's behind stealing the necklace. And because the tape basically it wasn't incriminating. The way they edited the tape and changed it, it was no longer incriminating. So now she feels she's still has in her mind that her dad is this guy who's always under attack unjustly. And so now she feels like she can tell her to be honest with her father. And he asked her, so because she knew about the necklace, why didn't you say something earlier? She was like, I don't know. And, I'm sorry for not saying something earlier. So now he knows who this person is. So we flash to Fabian, and, she's there. Of course, she's upset. But, she ends up grabbing, the book that Arsène gave her that he had purchased. And she was in the process of writing a note in the book when, of course, there was a knock at the door. She assumed, of course, that it was Arsène. And she was all ready for them to make, plan their next move. But, of course, it was that security guard, Pellegrini's security, that had followed her, that she thought she had lost. She didn't, obviously, because he came right to her place. And he ends up asking her, like, where does Arsène live? And, initially I thought she was going to tell him. But, she was like, you know what, a journalist never reveal their sources. And then it flashed to Arsène. He's coming back to her place. Of course, before he can even make it to the building, is it Jock? Is the name of the dog, her dog? He comes running out, and I guess he could tell that because the dog was out that something was wrong. He makes it into the apartment, and he can see her hanging from the ceiling, which of course I'm assuming brought back memories of his dad. Now, he never actually saw his dad, but just the imagery, I can just imagine that. And so he's upset, he's hurt, and you can see he got emotional. He started crying because he started to just care about her, and I think he just felt like this was another person in his life that's gone now. So she took the book, and as he was leaving, he was reading the note, and the note was basically like, we may have lost the war, but the battle isn't over. We may have lost the battle, but the war isn't over, and don't give up. We're going to find another way of doing this. And then while this is like a voiceover of her saying this, and while this is going on, you have Yusuf, who's now looking at the broadcast of the old guy. He has the composite of Arsène, and he's now made the connection that it's the same person. Okay, so it's the either next day or maybe a few days later. Arsène is in his apartment. Ben is there for moral support, and you can see by the newspaper that the death of Fabian is in the paper now. And he was talking to Ben and saying how he felt like it was his fault. And basically, if he hadn't involved her, that she would still be alive. And of course, Ben, he was like, I'm more concerned that I'm going to find you dead somewhere. And he's basically telling him that he should let it go. And, it's Rose's birthday, and you promised him this big surprise. And basically, you have so many other things in your life that you should be focused on. And he's just really worried about his friend. So at the police station, Yusuf is still doing his research. And I guess as the officers were leaving for the night, one of the officers was like, I think it's kind of shady that they pulled you off the case. And so Yusuf, was trying to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal. Like, it's really not. It happens sometimes. He was pretending like he wasn't all that bothered by it. And so he waited until everybody left, and of course he went to work, piecing things together and trying to figure things out. And he pulled an all-nighter. So it's the next morning, and he receives some type of alert that wakes him up. And he had a big smirk on his face. So a little bit later, the captain and Sophia was there, and they're still trying to figure things out, and they're frustrated that forensics still hasn't found any evidence of anything. And the captain was asking about Yusuf, and Sophia was like, "Oh, well, he sent me a text this morning saying that he was sick." And the captain was like, "Did he look sick to you? Did he look sick yesterday to you?" And she was like, "Well, he always looks sick to me." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He do kind of. It's obvious that he had become obsessed with this person and his theory. So Arsène is on his way to Claire's house, but he realized he's being followed by the same guard that killed Fabian. So now there's this whole chase, and eventually, of course, he got away, and he made it to Claire's house, and he ends up giving Raoul his first gift, which was a top hat, which is something that Lupin would have worn. And he ends up saying, "Well, we have to. This is not it. I told you I had a big surprise for you." And he's saying that we need to leave. We're going to be late for our train. And Claire and Rose was like, "The train?" He was like, "Yeah." He asked Claire if she was coming, and she said, "Well, no, I have some other plans." And he said, "Oh, you have a doctor's appointment?" And so they kind of laughed. She was like, oh, you snitched on me? Like talking to Raul. And so they laughed a little bit. And she eventually ends up going. But she was like, you always do this. But, you know, she relented and she ended up going with them. So you have a flashback of Claire. She's in therapy. And she's talking about Lupin and like how kind of dysfunctional their relationship is. And how, you know, he's inconsistent. He's unreliable. And he's, you know, kind of closed off and not really forthcoming. And, you know, the therapist was talking to her about him claiming it to be about her. She's saying that he's her soulmate, and she's saying at times it feels like he is, and then you know, there are times when he doesn't. It's like her relationship is kind of like a lot of with him has kind of been like a lot of ups and downs and uncertainty. And so you flash to Arsène, and he's pulling some swindle on this old woman. I was so done in. I was like, okay, so he's standing outside this posh apartment building. Two cops come up, and apparently, you know, he was saying that there was a robbery in the building, and how he think that some of the people got away, and he was telling the two cops that they need to go in a different direction, and that he was going to go in the other direction. As soon as the cops walked away, he rang the buzzer, and he had this fake badge and everything. He pretended to be a cop, and the lady buzzed him in. And he's talking to her about how another apartment got robbed, and, you know, how, you know, it's, you know, kind of bad, and sometimes they come back. He's scaring the devil out of this poor lady. So much so that she was like, well, are you going to stay? And he's like, well, you know, no, ma'am, I can't stay, you know. And she's like, but what am I going to do? And he was like, well, I have a solution. You could give me, you know, your most valuable items, and I can keep them at the police station in our locked room. And this poor woman gave this man all her jewelry, a Fabergé egg, and some of everything else. And so as he was leaving the building, the two cops were there, and he was asking them, well, did you see the people? And they were like, no. He was like, oh, well, they're, you know, kind of course, they don't know anything. They think he's a cop too. And so he's like, well, you know, I think they got away, but they dropped this bag of jewelry. So he showed them the jewelry, saying that it was like, it was evidence. And so he was saying, like, I'm going to go back to the station and do my report, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to write in the report how you guys did such a great job. And he's really like pulling this swindle, right? So you flash back to Claire, and, you know, she's still in, you know, therapy, and you kind of flash and see that she finds out that she's pregnant. And she's, you know, really concerned about how he's going to take it. Okay, so they all get on the train, you know, they find their seats and everything, and they, you know, seem to be, and, you know, everybody's in good spirits, and he and Claire are talking, and, you know, talking about where they're going. And of course, I'm going to put that on the screen somewhere, because I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. And, you know, they're, you know, trading, you know, quips back and forth. It's like, you know, old friends, like they do. And you can see on Raul's face that he was happy that his parents were, happy. It seemed like they were happy. They were getting along. It was nice. And so, there's a flashback of Arsène having dinner with Benjamin, and he was talking about, you know, how they, you know, they're planning, you know, this whole thing, how they plan, Benjamin found the store that he now has, and how they're going to set everything up, and the booty that he got from that old woman, that he swindled from that old woman, he ends up giving to Benjamin to sell out of his store. And so, of course, you know, they chuckled a little bit. And so in the background, you see this woman walk behind, and Benjamin was like, oh, okay, I see why we're here. And so Arsène goes into the bathroom, and you realize it's Juliet. So he's been having an affair with Juliet. And he says to her that, you know, I have to stop doing this. I have to focus on my marriage. I don't know if they're married at this point, my relationship with Claire. and like we can't keep doing this. And then she starts talking about her name, like Claire. That sounds boring. It's, you know, I wonder if she's you know, boring in every way, and just like talking crap about her. And so he basically tells her that he loves Claire, and basically that's who he wants to be with. And she says that she's in love with him. And so what do? And he, you know, kissed her, and he left. And you could see that she was devastated. And what was funny, because when he grabbed her, you know, he put his hands on both sides of her head to kiss her. And as soon as he left, she turned to make sure she still had both her diamond earrings. I about fell out. And you thought he was about to goop you in that moment. That would have been a hot mess. Like, you done broke up with her and then you stole her earrings. Okay. So we flash back to the train, and of course, you know, Sana is saying how good it is to get away, you know, with them. And eventually Claire ends up getting a text, and he was asking her, like, is that from your doctor? And she was telling him, like, none of your business. None of your business. Like, okay, we not together. You, like, basically, you don't have the right to ask me questions. And they ain't together. And eventually Claire got up to take a selfie. And when Arsène went to look at the selfie, he realized that the guard that he had got away from somehow found out where he was and is now on the train. He's obviously sitting further back. And so they flash to Pellegrini, and he gets a phone call from the guard basically saying that he could, that, you know, Arsène was there with his wife and his son. And Pellegrini tells him that don't hurt the wife and the kid. We just want him. I want him basically, I want him done away with, permanently. So eventually Arsène, he got up, and he had this cake in this, you know, box for Raoul. So he got the cake out, lit a candle, and he started singing "Happy Birthday" real loud. Everybody in that particular cart started singing "Happy Birthday," and so he was able to, you know, see the guy, and they made eye contact. So I know you see me, I see you, you see me seeing you. That whole thing. And, you know, of course they were all excited, so they started eating the cake, and he was like, well, let me see if I can find us something to drink. And so he went on a walk back, and of course walked past the guy. Eventually the guy got up and started following him. And so, you know, the guy is walking through to check everybody's ticket to make sure everybody's on the train that's supposed to be on the train. And he stops Arsène first and checks his ticket. And then the guy that was following him gets held up, and he needs to check his ticket. So by the time he checked the guy's ticket, Arsène has and for all intents and purposes, vanish as much as you can on a train. So you can see this man frantically going from car to car until he got all the way to the end, and realized, okay, obviously you know that he can't get off the train. So he knows that he's still on the train. So eventually he saw this cracked door. Of course he had to go in and investigate. Arsène pulls him in. A fight ensues, and he ends up he got the best of the man, and he ends up locking the man in the, I don't know if that's where to keep the luggage. It was a bunch of random stuff in there. Eventually, okay, so he locks him in. Eventually Arsène comes back, and he's like, well, I can't find any drinks. And she's like, okay, well, where did you go? And then he tells her he got into a fight, and she's like, what? And he basically said he was having a conversation, and basically it was like just a disagreement that kind of got a little physical, but everything was all good. And Claire was kind of like, okay, whatever. So then there's another flashback, because, okay, in the first flashback, when she was talking to a therapist, after that, she called him and told him that she wanted to, they needed to talk. And she wanted him to find a quiet place that they can go out and have dinner and talk. And so they're now at dinner. It's this fancy restaurant. And of course, she's already annoyed. She's like, I told you to find some place, you know, someplace quiet that we can talk. And he was ready to, you know, ask for the, you know, the check so that they can leave. And eventually she just said, no, don't worry about it. And then she told him that she was pregnant, and he was ecstatic. And you can see that her mood changed temporarily. I mean, you could still see that she had some reservations, because she know that their relationship is not where it should be. But she was also happy that he was happy, you know, that his reaction. And so, of course, he stood up and he made it into this whole announcement to the restaurant. Of course, they're all clapping and everybody's happy. And then who did he see? The old woman he swindled. And so he put some money on the table, I guess, to pay for that glass of champagne they poured. And he snatched up Claire, and they left. So they're back on the train, and it's almost time for them to get off. When he initially passed the guy and he checked his ticket, he told him they were like 20 minutes from their stop. So at this point, the guard is now out. He's walking towards him, and he sat next to Raul. So Arsène sat next to him, and Claire was like, do you know him? And he was basically like, no, not really. So Claire kind of knows something is up. So the next thing you see, Arsène, he pulled out his cell phone, and he sent a text to the captain. But the captain was busy going through some files or something, and so Sophie saw the text, and so she was reading the text, basically saying that his name, Paul Serini, and that he's getting off at this such train station. Let's meet for coffee, and I'm wearing a beige raincoat. And the captain was like, well, how did he get my number? Like, what is, and then she read the remaining text says, thank you from the guy, thank you for the pen from the Louvre. And then he remembered when he went to investigate the necklace, that he found the pen in his pocket. So he realized who it was, and he called the police that were in that area by the station. So Arsène ends up telling Claire and Raul to go ahead, as the other passengers were getting off, and that he would be behind. And so they went on and got off. And so the guard basically told him, he was putting his coat on and the whole thing. They get off, and the guard was telling him, don't try anything. And then he says, have you ever read the Mysterious Traveler? And so the next thing you know, in front of Arsène, all these cops with their guns drawn, basically saying, put your hands up and don't try anything, and Paul Serene. And so you think, oh, they got Arsène. No, they got the guard who was wearing a beige coat. And so when they checked him, he had a firearm and he had a diamond that was from the necklace. So they went on and took him into custody. And then Arsène went and joined Claire and Raul. There's another flashback of actually before then, Claire starts asking about Lupin, like, well, whatever happened to him? And Raul was like, well, nobody knows, because but we do know that he never got caught. And so there's a flashback of them walking after they left the restaurant after he found out that she was pregnant. And he was asking her when she was due, and she said December 11th. And he was ecstatic because his favorite author was born on the same day as Maurice Leblanc. He's the guy who wrote the Lupin books. And so, of course, he think it's like, it's fate, right? So initially, when they started going back and forth about names, obviously he wanted to name him Maurice. And of course she was like, I don't like that. And they threw a couple of names out, and eventually they came up with Raul. And I think initially she didn't like Raul, but she eventually obviously relented, and she decided to give their relationship another chance. Obviously they have this child that's coming, and so she decided to give him another chance. And then she was like, no, he said no more fuck ups, and he promised her that no more fuck ups. But obviously that was not the case, because at this point they are not together anymore. Raul ends up going down by the water, and they continue to walk the pier, I guess, and they were talking. And then Claire was asking him about that guy, and he wasn't really trying to say, he didn't say anything, and he was like, basically, I'm trying to settle some things, and it has to do with my dad, and once it's done, then I'll be able to tell you everything. And of course she got frustrated, because she was like, I've known you for 25 years and you've never even talked about your dad. I don't even know this guy. And she still feels like, all these years that they've been together, he's still not been, very forthcoming and open with her. And she's frustrated. And eventually, they continue to talk, and now she's now looking over by the water, and she realized that Raul is nowhere to be found. So they're now down by the water. Of course, there's a lot of people there, because around this time, they're going because there's a villa that Maurice LeBlanc owned down there, and I'm assuming that's where he wrote the books. And so it's a whole big day for people who are fans of the author. So they're all pretty much wearing the same thing, the top hat and the cape. And so of course when they get down to the water, there's like tons of people with the top hat and the cape, and so they're like frantically searching for Raoul. So they flash to the police station and they compare the mugshot of the guard to the composite of Arsène. They realize, okay, this is not the same person. So they're about to rush out to go and pick this guy up. And Dumont stops them, asking them where they're going. And they tell, the captain tells them, the captain tells him where they're going. And he basically said that you were too late. They've already let him go. And of course, Sophie and the captain's like, what do you mean? He had a diamond on him. He had the gun. Dumont was like, well, he has a gun license, and that diamond was obviously planted on him because at the night of the burglary, he has an alibi. He was somewhere else, and they're still trying to figure out what's going on. And eventually, he kind of flashed on them. Basically saying what they need to do is get the passenger log, get all the surveillance cameras, and basically they need to do their effing jobs. He can't do everything. So, I mean, so if their suspicions wasn't already heightened that he's hiding something, I think this kind of pushed them over the edge. Like, okay, this is crazy. So, Sophia was like, well, what are we supposed to do? At this point, Dumont has walked off. And the captain was like, well, what do you want me to do? He just told her to get the passenger log and to find Youssef. Or he said that Youssef should be here doing this work. And so you go back to Arsène and Claire, and of course they're still running up and down the beach trying to find Raoul. They flash to the guard, who is obviously now out. He's there. He just snatched up Raoul, threw Raoul in the back of a car and pulled off. And of course they didn't see this, so at this point they still don't know where Raoul is. And at this point, Claire and Arsène are separated. She's on one side of the beach looking for him. Arsène is on the other. And then next thing you know, Youssef appears behind him and just calls him Lupin. He turns around and they make eye contact. And the look on Youssef's face, I mean, the facial expression that both of them made was a lot. And that's basically how this episode ends. So, am I disappointed? No. Obviously, I mean, they had to keep the story going. I didn't really expect the thing to be resolved in 5 episodes. And, I can't wait for the next season. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.